This is Gemara mi Chulin, Daf Tes Zayin. I'm rolling two lines from the top to Zayin Amar Aleph. Amar Mar. As we're going to dive into the aforementioned brisa, continuing the discussion of items that you're allowed to shecht with. Amar Mar, we said in the previous brisa, sheched b'mochni. Someone shechts with a mochni, with a wheel, then shchitasai kshira. Frek the Gemara v'atan shchitasai psula. But there's a brisa that says it's possible. Explains the Gemara, there are different types of wheel. Loikasha b'sarni tepachra, hani b'tsari ha b'tsarna. Demaya, if using a sarna de pachra, a potter's wheel that's operated manually, that's going to be kosher. If you're using a sarna demaya, if you're using a water wheel which is operated by water, then the shechita is going to not be kosher. The water wheel. Different levels within the water wheel. You open the gate, the water flows, it turns the wheel. So you have the koyach rishon, and then you have the next level, koyach sheni, complicated. What is called koyach rishon? What is called koyach sheni? It says the Gemara, that's going to be the difference. And this, of course, is reminiscent of the Gemara in Sanhedrin that we learned. So he ties up his friend and then causes the water to flow over him and cause him to die. Chayiv, you're chayiv for killing him. My time, it's called your arrows, the honey bay that caused the death. But said the Gemara over there, the same nafka mina of honey milif is bekach risham bekach sheni kurama ba'almahu. Of course, it's not mutter, but when we're discussing whether it's considered that you directly killed him or not, the Gemara over there very famously says, kach risham kach sheni, which has ramifications in all of halacha, and of course, always complicated to properly quantify, clarify with precision what is called the kach rishon, what is called koyach sheni. Says the Gemara, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Yosef Rav Achayred Rav Chia. Rav was sitting behind Rav Chia. Rav Chia kamed de Rebbe, Yosef Rebbe v'kamer. So Rebbe was saying it's false. Minayin l'shchita shu betalosh. How do you know that shchita has to be done with an implement that is detached? Really bringing us back to yesterday's sugya, as we discussed different types of items, reeds, rocks, and the like, that one could shecht with, and we made a clear differentiation whether the item is attached to the ground, and therefore you cannot shecht with it, whether it's detached and you could shecht with it. We had that middle level, etc. So in front of Rebbe, they were saying over, how do we know that shchita has to be with something which is tolush, that is detached, it's not part of the ground anymore? Shenemar, a raya from Avram Avinu, it says, and he took the knife to slaughter, and a knife is detached, so we learn everything has to be detached. What are you talking about? Amar lei, vav dechsev, amar. He said something that is full of cracks, like a vav on a piece of a tree trunk. The raya is not a good raya. Why not? Frakti Gemara of a Krakamar. What do you mean his raya is not a good raya? It's a pasuk by Avram Avinu. Says the Gemara, Kra zirizute d'Avram. Kamash on the pasuk just talking about the zirizos of Avram Avinu. And therefore, that is the reason Avram Avinu wanting to make sure he performs the shechita properly. He brought a knife with him. But is this necessarily going to be indicative that the only way to do shechita is with such? Says the Gemara, not necessarily is it a clear raya. Amar Rava. So we don't really have a clear raya, but the Gemara continues. Amar Rava. Pshitali, we're about 15 lines down. The first one is Amar Rava, and this is going to be the continuation of the discussion between attached and detached. Was what? Something that is detached and then is reattached again by human hands. So Amar Rava Pshitali Talshub Soif Chibrai. If something was detached and you attach it to the ground, Lin Yinavoid Diskachavim Have Talosh. Regarding to Avodah Zarah, it is considered to be talush. It's considered to be detached. What does that mean, Damar Mar? We learned in Avodah Zarah, Hamishtach Avo Lebayis Shaloi, Asroi. If someone bows down to his house, the house becomes us. And if you're going to tell me that when I detach something and I reattach it to the ground, it has a din of a mechubar, it has a din of being attached to the ground, then what would the problem be? That why would the house that one bows be aser? What would the problem be? Says the Gemara. Says the Torah, Leheim al Harim. Their gods are on the mountains, meaning that it has to be a detached, quote unquote, god of Avodah Zarah al Harim, on the mountains. Lo Harim Elohehem. But not the mountains themselves could be gods. And therefore, if they worship the Etzem mountain, that's not going to cause the mountain, the ground, or anything else to be aser behanaya. So says the Gemara, the fact that a bias is usher must be a raya, that when something is detached, like the stones, the wood of the house, and then it's rebuilt into the house, that it's still going to be considered talush, and therefore that's why it's usher if it was worshipped. So that's klabe avodah zarah. But says the Gemara, linyan hechsher zuraim, klabe, something, whether it becomes susceptible to be makabel tama when you detach it and then reattach it back to the ground. Says the Gemara, Tanoi, that's machlokes Tanaim d'Tanan we learned in a Mishnah. Hakoife kairo yala koisel. If someone turns a plate over on top of a wall while it's raining, and then the rainwater drips onto the plate and then onto some of his produce. So says the Gemara, whether the items that now are wet are yes mikabel tuma or not, and we know the basic tenet is something's only mikabel tuma if it gets wet, and there is a ratzon of the bailim for it to get wet. So says the Brisa, we have an item that got wet from water that fell onto a kli, onto this produce. So says the Gemara, if you put the plate there to direct the water onto the produce, bishvil shetaduach, so that it should be rinsed, that you want the plate itself to be rinsed off by the water, then then when the water subsequently goes onto the zuraim, onto the produce, it's yes b'chiyutan, it's yes mekabel tama, even though you not necessarily want the produce to get wet, but because you want the plate to get wet, it means you want the water in this matziv. Then it continues, it's going to, yes, make something chokshar, susceptible to be makabel tum. But if you put the plate there, you put it there so the wall does not get damaged, you don't want the water here, bechlal, and then it goes on to the zrayim, einon b'chiyutan. It's not susceptible to be makabel tum. So it says the Gemara, 1 second. Hagufa kash, you want to be rinsed, what's the implication that if it's sheyoduach hakoisel? But the implication is, if you put the plate there for any other reason, let's say that the wall should get wet, ein zebechiyutan. V'adir and then what do they say for the Brisa to say? Bishvel shlo. If you put the plate there to block the wall, hakoisel ein zebechiyutan. But what's the implication? Abishol sheyoduach hakoisel ein zebechiyutan. So we have a stira, seemingly in a diukim in the Brisa. Amar Rav Elazar, Tavra. You think this is a stira? Misha shanazu, lo shanazu. The Reisha, the Seifa, are not taught by the same person, and therefore it's not a stira at all. Rav Papa Amar, kulachatanu. Ha bekoisel ma'ara, ha bekoisel binyan. There are different types of wall, the wall of a cave, or the wall of a house. That you want the kaira to get rinsed. It's yes mikabel, then the zraim are mikabel top. This is what the Gemara inserts in order to explain the Brisa. But what is this referring to? The wall of a cave. But if it's the wall of a house, then The wall of a house requires a higher level, not just that you want the water there. So if you put the kli there to block the wall, then yes. That will be enough. Excuse me, I said it wrong. If you put it there, why? Because you don't want the water there at all. But if you want the wall to be rinsed, then the wall of the house, yutan. Boy, Rav Papa. So again, we just said when something was detached and then subsequently reattached, we just said it depends. L'avodah zara, it has a din of detached. For Linin Achshazrayim, we said Tanoi, it's a machlekes Tanoi. Now says the Gemara, let's bring this back home to our sugya. Bai Rava asks Rava as we turn over to Tezayin Amid Beis. Talosh Ubsayv Chebra Linin Shchita Mai. So we just proved that Klap Ezrayim, it's detached. Excuse me, incorrect. Klap Avodah Zara, it is detached. Klap Yochshali Kabal Tuma, it's a machlekes tanoim. So what is the status regarding shchita? So Tashima, a brisa we just quoted it 2 days ago. Hayatzor yoytei min ha'koisel. If we have a rock protruding from a wall, or there's a reed growing on the wall, v'shachat ba shchita psula. So what do we see over here? We see something that when it's protruding from the wall, you cannot create a shchita. So seemingly we have a raya. It was detached, and then it was reattached. It still can't use it for shchita. Says Gemara, no. It's talking about the wall of a cave. Meaning, if we're talking about a regular wall, we assume you built the wall, and that's the reason why. But says the Gemara, we're not talking about the wall, a regular wall. We're talking about the wall of a cave. It wasn't a wall that was built, and that is the reason why maybe it will not work, because it was always considered attached to the ground. Says the Gemara, I'll bring you a raya. Like a reed that goes up on its own. Says the Gemara Vaiter, Tashima Noat Sakin. Bekoisel v'shachat b'shchita like sheira. So what do we see? We see it's yes good, even though it's now in the wall. Says Gemara, no raya shani sakin deloy mevatel lehi. There's no raya because a sakin you never mevatel to the wall, therefore it doesn't have the status as being reattached. Tashima another raya. B'mechover lekarka shchita like sheira. Someone shechted something. Well, it is attached to the ground, says the Brisa Shchita like Sheira. So what do we see? We have an item that was detached. You attach it to the ground, and still the Brisa says Shchita like Sheira. Says the Gemara, no raya. Why not tell my Perusha Mefarish law? My Mechaber Lekarka Sakin. What does it mean? What does it mean? So we have not yet had a teretz. What is the status? Klap eshchita. 10 lines down. Amar mahar. No, it's like because of shechavot shchita sik sheir. Amar Ravanan Amar Shmuel Shanu Elisha Sakin lemalo v'tavar beima lemata. When is the sheira of the sakin is above and the neck of the animals below? Sakin lemata v'tavar beima lemahila. Then it is not. Why not? And you know why not? Because we're worried. Shema yidrois. We're worried that you might be over in drisa. You might press during the shechita, not allowing the knife to cut, and therefore, if the animal's on top of the knife, it's not going to be good. Frek to Gemara, what everyone's wondering, because we all remember the brisa. Vakatani. But we learned in our brisa. In either case, it's cautious. Why are you telling me not? Amar Rav Zvid. So says Rav Zvid, let's study him. Then, even though the behemoth is lamaila, if it's bitalosh, then it's going to work. That's going to work. So it's not a stira at all. Teretz number 2, Rabba Amar Ba'ufa The Khalil, when we said in the second brace it's going to work, is the weight of a bird, is the slaughtering of a bird, an animal that is lightweight, and therefore we don't have to worry about drisa, but on a full-fledged gasa, full-fledged behema, we would, yes, be worried about. Amar Rav Chisda Amar Rav Yitzchak. Hey, Dvarim Namru Bikroim Mishal Kana. 5 things they said about a reed. Number 1, Ein Sheichatin Ba. Number 2, Vein Malam Ba, you can't use for Bas Milah. Vein Mechatzlin Ba, you can't use it to cut flesh. Vein Mechatzlin Ba, Shinayim, you can't use it to clean out your teeth. Vein Mekanchlin Ba, and you cannot use it to wipe yourself after you use the bathroom. What do you mean? We learned you could have had yes. Use it for shchita. The sedge of a marshland. That's the article translation. A certain type of reed that you could yes use. Other reeds you cannot. Karve dogim. Rapapa would use it to cut up the innards of the fish, tzigi, that are transparent. And therefore, what's the whole issue that if you're cutting with this reed, we're worried it's going to crack, go inside, you're not going to see it. If it's transparent, you'll be able to see it. He cut with it chicken, which is soft. Therefore, again, we're not worried this reed will crack off. You can't wipe yourself with a tape of if you wipe yourself with something that is flammable, it's bad for hemorrhoids. The Shinav Shel Lamata is referring to, and it's going to cause serious injury. So I'm sorry, it's like kasha. Why are you telling me you can't wipe it? Then it's pashit. Tepik. We should know this already. Explains the Gemara. Amar Papa Kinuach Pi Makik. I'm reading. We're not talking about wiping yourself after using the bathroom. We're talking about wiping the mouth of a wound. And that is what the bracelet is talking about, and that's why we need to have a new din. We'll stop over here. We'll pick it up from the 2 dots the next year. B'siyata dishmaya.